Good evening. We're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Sanhedrin Daf Pei Hey. Getting close to the end of the Masechta, another couple of weeks, Mir Hashem. I think we have about 25 blava, give or take, something like that. Okay, we just began yesterday the parak of Elohein Hanechnokin, and the first example of chenek that was presented in the Mishnah at the top of Pei Daled Amud Beis was Make Aviv V'imo. We started talking about this a little bit yesterday, and today we're going to dig a little bit deeper with a fascinating start to the sugya. We're on the top of Pei Hey Amud Aleph, right on the second line. And Ba'u Minei me Rav Sheshes, a question was posed to Rav Sheshes. Ben Mao Sheyase Shliach LaAviv LaHakosa ULakalalo. Back in the day, they had people who were executioners. They had people who would give out malkos. So what if Bezdin tried to appoint me to mete out a punishment, a physical harm punishment, but the recipient of that punishment was one of my parents? So on the one hand, I have Bezdin that's being mitzvah me to do something, so I'm under their umbrella of halachic protection. But at the same time, I have a pasuk in Chumash of Maka Aviv Imo, so now we have a conflict. So to this, Rav Sheshes responded, Amar le ve'acher mi hitiru. What about a non-child? What about a regular guy? So let's say it's not me and my father. Let's say Tex was invited by Bezdin to go do the damage to someone else's father. Why is he allowed to create a chabura? You're not allowed to hurt other Jews. So you're asking the question from Rav Sheshes, what about a son to a father? Forget about a son. What about anyone to anyone? Jews are not allowed to hurt other people. So he says, Ella, it must be that if we ever allow this to happen, it's because Kvod Shamayim Adif. That's because it's better to be Marba Kvod Shamayim by giving out a punishment, because a Yid must have done something wrong to get this punishment. And that's the heter for Acher, for a non-son. So therefore, Hachanami, even for a son, Kvod Shamayim Adif. Fascinating Gemara. So Rav Sheshes is of the opinion that a child is allowed to become the person who gives the malkos to a father. What's the svara? It's Kvod Shamayim. Manashach. We're overriding halachos no matter who we have do this. I think in South Carolina, I think they're right now I think this week they're at like the final stages of doing an execution of someone by firing squad. I think it's happened like 15 times in the last. I can't remember the units of measure. Very, very rare. The guy chose it. He didn't want the chemical. He chose it. And what they do is they get volunteers to be the ones who do the shooting. So Bezdin's a shtickle different than that. There's also no Kvod Shamayim in a Bezdin, in a secular court like this. Why would the guy choose? The firing squad is multiple people, and one of the guns has blanks. One of the guns. I read an article the other way. No, the article I read said in one country there were 5 guns, and one of the 5 guns had all blanks, but nobody knew which gun they received. Because everyone could argue, at least maybe I didn't kill him, I don't think I could go to sleep at night. You probably have to be a killer to start with. What?
They signed up to do it also. So.
That's not normal. That's not normal.
Such a mitzvah.
No, they're doing they're doing
it. These guys are meeting out their own anger.
Yeah.
That's all that's happening. This is
I'd be nervous.
Yes. Yeah, they're not up for parole. They have to stay in the prison. So they said that they were actually security guards. They were professional correctional officers who were, who knew how to handle a gun, whatever the case may be. Anyways, this is obviously a loftier level than that, because when a person does an avera, in addition to the avera itself, it's also a chiluk kvod shamayim. So here we're trying to be metakin. So Rav Sheshes, who we're going to question and we'll soon see reject by the time we get to the top of the Amud Beis, he holds that a child is allowed to be I don't want to say executioner, because we're not talking about that kind of a concept. We're talking about lahakosa ulakalalo. That's what the Gemara is.
Won't be using the right amount of force.
What?
They won't be using the right amount of force because it's apparent.
Not that I know of. I don't think so. So then the Gemara asks a question from an extremely cryptic brisa. Take a look at this. Meisvei, 5 lines down. Uma, and just like Misha mitzvah lahakoso, when there's a mitzvah to give someone malkos, still mitzvah shelo lahakoso. He still is mitzvah not to hit him, meaning not to hit him more than necessary. Yes, there's malkos, but he only gets 39 or 36 or 33 or 30, whatever we agree. You're not allowed to give him more. That's mitzvah shelo lahakoso. Misha ena mitzvah lahakoso. But then when it comes to someone who is hitting someone when they have no mitzvah to do so, Eino din shemitzvah shelo, all the more so, they shouldn't be hitting them more than is necessary. Now, this is very cryptic. There's 100 ways to understand this. My lab says the Gemara, idi b'makom mitzvah. Perhaps both of these are talking about b'makom mitzvah as it relates to Bezdin, habibno and acher. One's talking about a son, and one's talking about an acher. So the acher, he's the one who's mitzvah lahako. So Bezdin asks him to do it, but he's not allowed to do more. A son who's not mitzvah, really, it could have been another person. Why pick the son? So Eino din that he should not hit his father. So says the Gemara, that therefore is a possibility that the Brisa is not a kasha on Rav Sheshes. Let's see why. Below kasha. Perhaps the Brisa is not talking about a son at all. Perhaps kan b'makom mitzvah, kan shelo b'makom mitzvah. One's talking about where there is a mitzvah, and one is talking about where there isn't a mitzvah. Hachik tani. And here's how we can understand this cryptic brisa in a way that Rav Sheshes can withstand the question. Uma v'achiktani. It's a quarter of the way down. Uma b'makom mitzvah shemitzuvah lahakoso mitzvah shelo lahakoso shelo b'makom mitzvah she'ena mitzvah lahakoso eino din shemitzuvah shelo lahakoso. Talking about just regular, is there a mitzvah to hit or is there not a mitzvah to hit? And because the brisa is talking about that and not about a ben, so therefore, we can't learn from this cryptic brisa anything at all about Rav Sheshes. So that was question one, asked and answered. We tried to knock down Rav Sheshes from this brisa, that had it been that the brisa was saying that it was talking about a ben, then there would be a difference between a ben and an acher, which would make it seem that Rav Sheshes is wrong because the ben shouldn't be able to hurt his father in that frame. That's not what the brisa is talking about. And a third of the way down, the Gemara poses a second question, Tashma. Hayotze lehareg, if someone's father, Rachmana litzlan, is being carried out to the gallows, or he's walking out to the gallows, clearly there's some anger management issues, and the harug, the guy who is going to be killed, his son shows up and kills him. The halacha is chayev. So let's just get this straight. This guy's walking out to the gallows in his straight jacket, orange jumpsuit. His son comes out of the blue and kills him. So the halacha is that he's chayav. However, if another person comes out and injures the father, so then a non-child would be pater. Why would that be? Why would there be any distinction between these two people? You're not allowed to kill someone, or if he's considered a harug already because he's going to die, then even the son should be pater for killing him. We're talking about a case where the father was supposed to walk to the gallows, and he wasn't walking. And in that case, because he wasn't walking to his death, he's not yet a harug, even though it was paskined on him, and therefore the child would be chayiv. The Gemara is going to ask exactly your question. Rav Sheshes says, don't ask this question against me to make it seem like it's usher for the child to kill his father. Rav Sheshes says, Mukila b'shein mesarvim bolates. Maybe the case scenario where the child is going to be chayiv is where the father is not refusing. Yihachi acher nami. What about why would the son be pater but not the why would the son be pater? The father's walking to the gallows, so he's a harug mamish. So if that's true, then the same thing should be true. Hachi acher nami. The same should be true for a non-child also, says the Gemara. In regards to the acher, so it's not. Let's say you have Ruvain and Shimon. So Ruvain's the father. So Ruvain's chayav misa. He's walking to the gallows benachas. So then, if the child kills him, he's pater. Yeah, but why would you distinguish in the brisa between the son, where we say you're pater from killing, acher should be pater also? Says the Gemara, acher gabra ktila. We said no, by the acher is gabra ktila. Says the Gemara, no, that doesn't work either, because Amar Rav Sheshes, Paisho Yoshen v'meis chayev. Rav Sheshes is the one who says that if a person, let's say Ruvain makes fun of Shimon while Shimon's sleeping, And then 5 minutes later, Shimon dies in his sleep. He never heard what was said about him. The halacha is that whoever made fun of who, let's say Reuven made fun of Shimon and Shimon died, chayev. The halacha is that you are chayev. So what we see is that you should be, what?
You have to do.
Oh, you did something wrong. You did something usher.
There's no way for you to.
It's a busha. You have to pay boshes to the yorshim. That's what Rashi says over here. It says chayev damizbaishin banov hainami lo shna. There should be no difference over here. We should have said that the guy should have been chayev. Why would you say that as it relates to the acher, to the non-son, that he's a gavra ktila, that he's a dead man walking? Even a dead man, if you made fun of them, you have to pay for it. And says the Gemara, what case?
The whole killing, you're paying to the Yorshim because they're embarrassed.
That's what Rashi said. Yeah.
So when you hit somebody, it's no,
That's
the Yorshim.
That's true. So what?
But it could still be a.
You're trying to undercut the question.
Side of the, you're talking about comparing Shah and Hakah, which is different because it has other people involved.
But it could still be a busha.
But let's say it's not.
But that's not what's
Then
happening. Then it's apples and apples, right? Yeah. The Gemara doesn't seem to be bothered by the comparison. Yeah, I hear your distinction. So the Gemara responds that the nafkamina between a son hurting his father and a non-son hurting that same man is when there's an injury that's done that's less than a shava pruta. And what that would mean is the son would be chayav for that, but an acher would not be chayav for that. How can you say that? You wanted to seem to say that ein b'shava pruta, you're going to be pater, but we have a brisa. Well, it's not a brisa; it's a memra. It was said by the Amoraim that if you hit someone and the damage is less than a shava pruta, loke. So says the Gemara, my pater de kamar. When the brisa above said ba'acher v'hikau v'kila lo pater, when the non-son hit, he would be pater. My pater de kamar, pater mi mamon. He would be exempt from money. So he doesn't have to pay. So that means if another person were to hit, let's say Reuven, was Reuven and Shimon. So Reuven's the parent and Shimon's the child, and Yaakov comes over and hits Reuven. So in that case scenario, we would say as long as it's less than a shava pruta, the acher, the non-son who hits the father, he's pater because it's less than a shava pruta. Michlal, what does that imply? Dibno chai b'mamun. That makes no sense. That diuk makes no sense. So this whole case makes no sense. Says the Gemara, Ella, it must be that when it says pater, it means bedino, and hachanami bedino. That really they would say that the son is actually going to be chayev if it's less than a shava pruta, and the father is going, and the acher is going to be pater. That's the nafkamina between them. So therefore, the Gemara now has to try again and understand our question about this person being a gavra ktila. Ela acher hainu taima de pater. So we didn't really find a reason why the acher was pater. So the Gemara wants to know, Ela acher hainu taima de pater. The reason why a non-son who hits a man is pater is the amar kravanasi ve'amcha lo saor, is that if you're a prince of a man among the nations, then good to go, but osa ma'asa amcha. But if you're acting like a behema, so then you're pater. So that would be a distinction between the two, is that if the guy was behaving like a tzaddik, like a ben Torah, so then fine. We understand. We understand that's where the isra of nasi ve'amcha lo saor. So this is considered a ptur for the acher, is that if the man is misbehaving, that's bo'osim ma'aseh amcha. But if he's not being bo'osim ma'aseh amcha, so then you're pater, just like the acher was. And that's what the brisa above meant. When it said ba'acher v'hikahu v'kilalo, we said he's pater, that's because this man, the father, was not acting like a normal person. He wasn't in the category of o'osim ma'aseh amcha. Says the Gemara hatenach klala. I agree that when it comes to cursing someone, that there's a difference between me cursing a parent while the parent is osem ma'aseh amcha, the person's behaving normally, versus if a person curses their parent and their parent is not behaving normally. That makes sense. I could understand the distinction. But hakah minalam. But how do we know that when it comes to hitting someone, is hitting a father less of an isser if the father is not behaving like a mensch? Where would we know this from? So says the Gemara, the makshina nakah leklala. You're right. The only reason we would assume it to be true is because we compare a klala to akah. Yihachi, if this is true, says the Gemara, so beno nami, the son should also be pater if he's involved in this, if he hits his father. And what did the brisa above say? We said that hayotze lehare gubah benovi hikov kila lo chayev. So if it's true that there's a heter of anasi va'amcha lo saor, that if a father is misbehaving and therefore acher, a non-son who hits him would be pater, well then we should say the same exact thing by a son. So again, why does the brisa distinguish between a son who's chayiv and an acher, a non-son who's pater? So says the Gemara, Keda'amar of Pinchas b'sha'asa tshuva, hachanami b'sha'asa tshuva. Why do we say that the acher is going to be pater? That's because there was tshuva. That's why the child is going to be pater, because the father did tshuva. So the Gevaldik, if the father did tshuva, then the son is going to be chayiv, because you can't hit someone who does tshuva. Yihachi acher nami. If it's true that he did tshuva, then acher should have the same exact din, because the guy is a tzaddik again. He did tshuva. So why would we say in the brisa that acher would be pater for hitting him? Because at the end of the day, the guy's a tzaddik now. So Amar Rav Mari, be'amcha b'mekuyim shebe'amcha. In our case, it's different. When do we say that the b'sha'asa tshuva makes it that the person is going to be totally chayav for me to hit him again? That's when he has a life ahead of him. But if this guy is not mekuyam shebe'amcha, he's not going to live. He's going to the gallows in the morning. In that case, even if he was asa tshuva, but because he's not in the category of b'mekuyam shebe'amcha, so then you're going to be, as the acher, you're going to be pater. Yihachi, if it's true that the category of mekuyim shebe'amcha is real, if the fact is that even if the father did tshuva, but the Maisa, he's not mekuyim shebe'amcha, because he's going to be put to death tomorrow morning, off to the gallows. Yihachi, bino nami, his son should also be pater. Again, same question over and over again. Why is it that the brisa in the middle of Pei Hamid Aleph would say that there's a distinction between a son hitting his father under these circumstances and an acher hitting his father? The circumstances were where the father was about to head off to the gallows. So says the Gemara, Midi Dahabi la'achar misa. Says the Gemara that there's a similarity over here to the case of la'achar misa, of after a father dies. We're going to learn about that in the next Mishnah in just a few lines. So take a look at Rashi at the top of the page. Midi Dahabi la'achar misa, di'alfinan lekaman mi kilel la'achar misa chayev. That perhaps the brisa that says that the son is chayev for hitting his father is hitting him after misa, which doesn't apply to an acher. So that maybe that's why we distinguished. But if that's true, then it's not a kasha on Rav Sheshes at all. So let's see, how do we paskin my have ela? Remember, our question that we started with today is, can Bezdin utilize a son to execute hakah v'klala toward a father? So says the Gemara, Amar Rabba bar Rav Huna b'chein Tana de Rabbi Shmuel, lakol ein haben nasa shliach la'aviv l'hakosu l'kalala. For every halacha, a son is not allowed to be the one, to be the messenger of Bezdin for his father, to hit his father or to curse his father, chutz mimesis, except if a person's father is causing for avodah zarah. Shehare amra Torah lo sachmal v'lo schaseh alav. There is no mercy for that person. And therefore, even a child can be the executioner of his father if he's being a mesis. Yikes. Okay, all of that is that. We learned one sugya so far with a lot of nuance, which is, do we hold like Rav Sheshes, who says that yes, because of Kavod Shamayim, we are allowed to have a son be the one who's makeh or mekalel his father. He said we are allowed because of Kavod Shamayim, just like we let acher do it. We also let the ben do it, and the Gemara concludes not that way. The Gemara concludes in the name of either Rabba bar Rav Huna or a brisa in the name of Rabbi Shmuel, not sure which one, based on the pasuk that is in Dvarim lo sachmol v'lo sechaseh alav. We have no mercy on him. And that seems to be how we paskin, that the only time a child can ever curse his father, maybe in his whole life, is if the father is a mesis and the son is the one who's going to curse him out.
I don't know what the word is, an ace of that. He's allowed to, but he should get somebody else if it's an option.
I don't think so. Lo sachmol v'lo sechaseh alav is pretty strong.
Yeah.
He made his own bed. I don't think, I mean, I could be wrong. I just don't, I don't see why we would say that. Not the way the Gemara is talking. So the next Mishnah, and we're going to go down to the Mishnah that's about 3/4 of the way down, and then we'll stop. So that Mishnah says as follows. Amake avi v'imo, if a man hits his father or mother, eno chayv ad sheyaseh bahen chabura. You only reach the level of Isser deoraisa, of chenek. Remember, that's what our parak is talking about make avi v'imo, in regards to the Isser of chenek, the ownership of chenek. So says the Gemara, says the Mishnah, that you're only chayiv if you hit a parent in a way where there's a chabura, where there's a bruise. So let's say a child walks over to his father and slaps him across the face, no bruise. So you're a bad person, but you're not getting chenek, right? Because there's no bruise. Zeh chomer b'mekalel shebemaka. There's something worse about cursing a father than hitting a father. What is that? Shahamekalel la'achar misa chayev. If a person were to curse a father after he dies, so then you're still chayev chenek. That's pretty amazing. The standard of halacha and how we treat parents is so remarkable. I find myself saying all the time in my house, sweetheart, we're not equals. We're not the same. Why do I always have to listen to you, Dad, and you don't have to listen to me? That's a pasuk in Vayikra, and it's not my idea. I agree with it wholeheartedly. Have you ever seen me talk to my parents that way? All the things that we all say to our kids, you know. So the Gemara says that there's a difference because the Mekalel, if a child is Mekalel his father or mother after the father or mother has passed away, they're still chayiv. But v'hamake la'achar misa pater. But somebody who bruises a parent's body after they die, also bodies don't bruise after you die. There's no blood flow. So again, maybe it's just hitting. I don't know. I don't know what happens. I presume that there's no.
Unless the hit happened before he died.
No, it doesn't seem that way. I mean, the language of the Mishnah is pretty clear about.
She said the chabura leka,
Yeah.
as you're saying.
So any
There's
hit.
never going to be a chabura because there is no blood flow.
So any hit is no matter
It's not
what.
gonna cause a chabura.
No. Oh yeah. Sorry, I'm in my head. I was thinking
That's
chayiv.
what you're saying.
Yeah. Sorry, I flipped the pater and chayiv. Flipped those two around. What does this little note say? Oh, okay. Sefer Chasidus, not for now. Okay, so that when it comes to makeh la'achar misa, you're always going to be pater because, well, why is it? Is it because what Rashi says? Is it because there is no bruise, but had it been there was a bruise, right? So that's for the Rishonim to be done. Or do we say the behaviors of Maisa Kof? What are you hitting your father for? Alive or dead? It's not normal. Okay. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis have taught us in a brisa, where 7-8 lines down on Pei Hamid Beis. Aviv v'imo kilel. His father and his mother he did curse. La'achar misa. He did so after misa. Sheyachol. You might have thought, Hoel v'chayev b'maka v'chayev b'mekalel. You might have thought that since a child would be held accountable for chenek, for hitting their father, and be held accountable for chenek, for cursing their father, ma make eno chayev ela mechayim. I might have thought, afa mekalel eno chayev ela mechayim. That's why we need a second pasuk, which we'll soon see. The ode another challenge as to what I might have misunderstood with only the words of Avi v'imo kilel. The ode, and furthermore, there's a kal v'chomer. Uma maka she'asabo shelo ka'amcha kebe'amcha. When we talk about hitting, she'asabo shelo be'amcha kebe'amcha, that the same isser applies whether or not the father is begeder amcha. You could have a father who's a zis, sweet tzaddik of a man, and you could have a father who's a pickaxe serial killer murderer. When it comes to makeh, we don't distinguish in behavior of the parent. If a child hits a parent, no matter a groise tzaddik or a groise rasha, a parent with the exception of a maces, like we saw, then we make no distinction by makkah. And there, lo chiyeh bo la'achar misa. And even by makkah, where we don't distinguish between v'nasi v'amcha lo so'or, still we would say that there's no chiyuv after misa. Maybe I would have thought, erroneously so, that mekalel shelo asabo shelo be'amcha kibe'amcha, Then by Mekalel, where we don't say that the behavior of the father is irrelevant, by Mekalel, if the father is a Grois Tzaddik, yes, there's an Isser of Kilel. But if the father is a Grois Rasha, then there is no Isser of Kilel. So Kilel is weaker than Makkah, because Makkah we don't distinguish between Benasi Ba'amcha and Shelo Ba'amcha. And by Kilel we do. So I might have thought, Eino Din, Shelo Chayav Bo La'achar Misa. I might have thought that a Kilel after death is not going to be the case. Talmud Lomar Aviv Ve'imo Kilel. That's why we have an extra pasuk. So we have multiple psukim at play here. And therefore, we want to make sure that we know that la'achar misa, that there will be an iser doraisa and chenek if a person is mekalel his father or mother after he or she dies. So says the Gemara, that works according to some people. Hanicha lemanda amar, hanicha l'Rabbi Yonasan, demiyaser leikra avi ve'imo. According to Rabbi Yonasan, when we analyze all the drashas that Rabbi Yonasan ever made, he never made a drasha on these two psukim except for this. Then I could understand what the pasuk of Avi v'imo kilel does. It reminds me that if a person is mekala la'achar misa, that the child will still be chayiv. That works according to Rabbi Yonasan because the words Avi v'imo are available. Elul Rav Yoshia, ma'ika l'meimar. We're about to learn his shita, but according to Rav Yoshia, the words of Avi v'imo kilel are not available for drasha. And if they're not available for drasha, then from where would we know that being mekalel a parent after they die is chayiv chenek? After all, the Tanya, the Brisa writes, and this is a Brisa that we saw 20 blot ago. The pasuk says ish ish. Let's get the whole pasuk learned here. Ki ish ish asher yekalel es aviv ve'es imo. If there is a man who cursed his father and his mother, mos yumas, he should be killed. Avi v'imo kilel, he cursed his father and mother, dam of bo. So you can see the pasuk is duplicative. So the pasuk says, what do we learn from ish ish? Ma Talmud Omer ish ish lerabos bas tumtum ve'androgenes. This comes to teach us that the isser of kilel, of cursing a parent, applies not only to a son, which is what the pasuk says of ish ish, but the double language of ish ish comes to teach me that I include three others in the isser of cursing a parent: a bas, a daughter, who is not expressly written in the pasuk. A tumtum is not really either gender. It's very difficult to tell what they are. We've discussed this before in halacha 100 times, that a tumtum is someone who has a piece of skin covering over their anatomy in such a way that we can't even tell what the gender is. And then the last one is androgynous, a person who's showing signs of both male and female genitalia. And in those cases, we might have thought Havamina that perhaps they're exempt from the Isser of Kilel because the pasuk says ish. No, the pasuk says ish ish. And the extra word ish comes to include a bas, a tumtum, and an androgynous, that they too would be chayiv skila if they were mekalel their parents, even after misa. So then the Gemara says, asher yekalel es aviv ve'esimo, that he cursed his father and his mother. I might have thought Einli ela aviv ve'imo. I might have thought that the only time that there's going to be a klala followed by chenek is when this child intended on cursing and in fact cursed both his mother and his father. But aviv shelo be'imo, imo shelo aviv. Read that better. Aviv shelo imo and imo shelo aviv. If a man only cursed his father, or if a man only cursed his mother, well, perhaps he should be pater minayin. How do we know that he's not pater and he's still chayiv? Talmud lomar aviv ve'imo kilel, aviv kilel or imo kilel. Divrei Rav Yoshia. Rav Yoshia seems to say that pasuk is coming to teach me something already. That's why the pasuk's not available to remind me of the earlier din that we were trying to figure out with these words of aviv ve'imo kilel, that we had said was to teach us that if a child is mekalel their parents posthumously, they're going to be chayiv chenek. But now those words are not available anymore to learn that din. Because the words aviv ve'imo kilel, according to Rav Yoshia, what are they being used for? They're being used to teach me something that wasn't really clear in the psukim. The psukim seem to say that only if you are mekalel aviv ve'imo comes along the pasuk of aviv ve'imo kilel, and Rav Yoshia gives a drasha. No, it's either or. It's not and. Just changing the operator. Now, all of that is Divrei Rav Yoshia. Rav Yonasan says, no, the words aviv ve'imo kilel are perfectly available because there was never a havamina, even though the pasuk wrote it. Rav Yonasan says that's not how you read the pasuk. Mashma shnein ke'echad u'mashma echad ve'echad bifnei atzma. Ad she'yafart lecha akasav yachtav. Unless the Torah is going to say the word yachtav, right? We say lo sach som shor b'disho, whatever. Is it yachtav is the next word? Whatever the next word is. Yeah. Yeah. That was close. I knew there were animals involved. Could be. So what does Rav Yonasan say? No, the starting point is not that the only Isser Kilul is Avi v'Imo. That's only true when the word Yachtov is in the Pasuk. But when there is no Yachtov in the Pasuk, there's no reason for us to bring a drasha. So what does he have left over? Avi v'Imo Kilel. So that means that Rav Yoshia uses the Pasuk of Avi v'Imo Kilel to teach me that the Isser of Kilul applies to a child who curses either the father and or the mother. It can be individual or together. But according to Rabbi Yonasan, I don't need that pasuk because that's pashut, because we don't have the word yachdav. I don't have to assume they're together. So then, minale, if that's true, then how would Rav Yoshia learn that there is kilul after misa? After all, he can't use the words that the previous brisa used, because the previous brisa used words that Rav Yoshia uses for something else. So how does Rav Yoshia know that there's going to be an Isser Kilul after Misa? So it says the Gemara, Nafkale mi umekalel aviv v'imo mos yumas. This is another pasuk in Sefer Shmos. So we have a pasuk in Vayikra Parak Kaf and a pasuk in Shmos Parak Kaf Aleph, and they both talk about Kilul. Ay v'idach, Rabbi Yonasan, what do you do with this pasuk of umekalel aviv v'imo mos yumas? I know what Rav Yoshia does with it. He teaches that Kilul posthumously is going to be chayiv chenek. But what do you do with this pasuk? Says the Gemara. Rav Yonasan says, "Ahumi boile." Ahumi boile the rabos bas tumtum vandrogenes. He says, I needed that, the pasuk of umekalel avi v'ima mos yumas, to teach me that the isser of kilul of a parent applies to a daughter, a tumtum, and an androgynous. Says the Gemara, why would you say that? We don't need the pasuk of umekalel aviv v'ima mos yumas for a bas tumtum and androgynous. The tepa kleme ish ish. We already had the drasha before of the extra word ish in the pasuk. So why are you not utilizing ish ish to teach you bas tumtum and androgynous, Rav Yonasan? Why are you using a different pasuk of umekalel aviv v'ima mos yumas? Says the Torah, first of the long lines, dibra Torah kalashim b'nei adam. No diyukim from a double language of ish ish. This is the way people talk. I don't know if we have words like this that we mamish say twice in a row. Please, please. I guess, I don't know. But the way that the Torah is saying this is Lashon Bnei Adam, it's ish ish, and therefore you cannot learn from it. The Gemara says, well, why didn't we learn the following? Listening, maybe the Brisa should have taught Chomer b'maka mi b'mekalel. There's a stringency with hitting a parent, more so than with cursing a parent. Shamaka asabo shelo be'amcha kive'amcha ma she'en kin b'mekalel. That a maka has a chumrah to it. If a child hits a father, we don't care if your father's a rasha or a tzaddik, maka is still usher. By mekalel, we do distinguish. So perhaps, suggests the Gemara, the Brisa should have written that not kilel is more chamor because you're chayiv posthumously, but maka is more chamor because whereas by mekalel we distinguish between if the father's a rasha or not, by maka we don't. We don't care what your father is. If he's rasha or tzaddik, you hit him, you're chayiv. So says the Gemara, Kasavar Makshina Naka Leklala. Perhaps that this shita holds that the halachos are the same. That when it comes to this aspect of halacha, that we don't distinguish between be'amcha and shelo be'amcha. And the Gemara then suggests, we're coming up on the end of our day, we're almost there, we have to get to our Mishnah. Le'mahani tanoi kehani tanoi. Perhaps the tanoim that we have in our Mishnah are similar to the in our Brisa, are similar to the tanoim we have elsewhere. To Tani, we have a machlokes as follows. Chada, one person holds kusi atamitzuve al hakaaso atamitzuve al hakaaso v'atamitzuve al kilalaso. That you are mitzuve to not hit a kusi, but you're not mitzuve on the klala. You are allowed to curse a kusi. V'tani idach atamitzuve al kilalaso v'lo al hakaaso. So how do we understand this machlokas? Savruha, we might have thought to kule alma kusim gere emesein. Maybe we want to say that the kusim, this group of people who were from Ashur, from Assyria, perhaps they really were gere emesein. And if that's true, then my la b'hakamiflage demar savar makshin akala klala, mar savar lo makshin akala klala. Maybe we should say that there is just a machlokes as to whether or not the halachos are the same of hakan klala. According to the ones who say that there is a hekesh, then that would mean that there's no difference between hakan klala as it relates to the distinction of is the person I'm hitting a rasha or a tzaddik, both by hakah and by klala, by cursing a father and by hitting a father. The halacha would be the same even if the father's a rasha. Masha'en kain, if you don't make the hekesh, so then we do make a distinction, which is that hakah, we don't distinguish between rasha and tzaddik, but by klala we do. Says the Gemara, you've misunderstood. Lo. Dekule alma, and we're 3/4 of the way down, 6 lines, 7 lines into the wide lines. Dekule alma lo makshin and hakah klala. Everyone agrees that there's a difference between hakah, where we say that you're chayiv no matter what on hitting your father, rasha or tzaddik, and klala, where we say that you're only chayiv if the father is a tzaddik, but if he's a rasha, you're pater for cursing him. What are these tanoim arguing about? Mar savar kusim gerei emes. One shita holds that they're gerei emes, and that's why we say that by makkah that they're going to be chayiv no matter who the father is. But by klala we distinguish. However, umar savar kusim gerei arios hein. They say that they're converts only because of lions. They had a pure fear, and that's why they converted, which is a questionable conversion. If it's true that there were gerei arios hein, then hainu diktani alav v'shoro ki Yisrael. Why would the halachos of their animals be like the halachos of Yisrael's animals? After all, they converted for ulterior motives, and their conversion is questionable. Elishma mina. Rather, we see from here that behekesha pliki. We see that in fact the machlokas between the Tanaim is about hekesh, which is, do we say that there's a perfect hekesh between hakah and klala? And then we don't say that if the klala of a father is to a father who's a rasha, you're pater. We don't say that. That's if you hold that there's a perfect hekesh between hakah and klala. But the other shita in the Tanaim holds not that way. The other shita holds that lo makshin and hakah klala. And therefore, by hakah, the rules are its own, which is no matter who you hit, if your father's a rasha or a tzaddik, you're chayiv. But by klala, we do distinguish because there is no hekesh, and therefore, shma mina, that is what the machlokas is about. Starting at our next Mishnah, it'll say agonev nefesh mi Yisrael, which is about kidnapping people, and we're going to discuss the parameters of that. Wishing you all a beautiful night.